Within this lecture, we're going to see how to get the MAC address of the target IP. And let me just make all of these things into a function, because later on we will have to do that. So let me do it from scratch this time and not go over the reformatting thing once more, because we're going to need that when we test this as well. I'm going to change this to be 10.02.1 later on and change the source IP address to be target IP address. So we're going to use this more than one time. So let me create this function and let us call that ARP poisoning, okay? And within that ARP poisoning, we're going to need a target IP as usual and a router IP or a poisoned IP. It really doesn't matter what you call it, but I don't want to call it router IP because later on I will use the router IP to be target IP as well. So we're going to take two IPs anyway. I will assign this target IP to be my PDST and poisoned IP to be my PSRC, and actually it really doesn't matter at the end because I will just do the opposite at the end. Because why? Because we're first targeting the target device and then the router itself, as we did in the man-in-the-middle back in ethical hacking parts. So let me delete this and write target IP in here, okay? And this will be target IP, and rather than PSRC, let me write poisoned IP. So this will be more structural, right? So we managed to get this target IP and poisoned IP in here, but we kind of have to find a way to find this HWDST as well. So this will be MAC address of target IP. But how do we get the MAC address of target IP? So we get this by using an ARP request, right? We did that in the previous section with the network scanner. So we know how to get it. We specify an IP to the network scanner and it will get and take the MAC address and match it with the IP address. So I believe the best way to do that is just to open our network scanner code and copy the function and paste it in here, because we're not going to use the function as it is. We will have to manipulate it a little bit. So we cannot import it. We have to change it manually. So let me open my previous project from here, okay? So you have to say file, open, and then find the PyCharm project. So it's under root and PyCharm projects, and let me search for it, my network scanner, yes, this one. And you have to say new window, because if you say this window, it will close this down and open the other project instead. So remember, we have to take the scan my network function in here. So it has this scapy.arp instance, scapy.ether thing. Just take it all, and then later on we will manipulate it, because right now it's taking an IP as we want, but it's not returning a MAC address. It's rather just displaying a summary to the user. But this time we don't want a summary, we only want the MAC address of the specified IP address. And it's easy to do that. We will figure out how to do it on ourselves. So let me copy all of this here, okay? Right click and say copy. And then we are done with this project. Let me close this down because I'm going back to my ARP poisoner here. And let me paste this function above and then start manipulating it. As I explained, we have to get only one single MAC address out of this function. Because we are not interested in the summary this time. User will not even see what's going on in backstage. Okay? So user will not know if we go and send an ARP packet and try to match the MAC address at all. User will only give the IP address and we will do the work for them. So let me just test this and see how it works with this stage, and then later on we will change the code and try to just rewrite it according to our needs. And let me do this. We will say scan my network and just give the 10.0.2.8 the IP address, target IP address as an input. And I believe we have to give it as a string, so let me surround this with quotation marks and then just save this. Okay, and let me minimize this and let me run this Python code. So as you can see, it says that this 10.0.2.8 has this MAC address and this IP. So we managed to get this MAC address. It actually works, but we managed to get a summary. And as I said before, the summary won't even matter to us because we're not going to show it to the user at all. The user won't even know that we are doing this. So let's find a way to get only the MAC address. Let's begin by deleting this line because we're not going to use it anymore. So let's delete this. And let's change the function name because we're not going to scan the entire network. We are targeting only one IP address at this stage. So rather than saying scan my network, I will say get my MAC or get MAC address as this function. Get my address seems a little bit awkward. Get MAC address is better. So in here, we're going to work with answered list only again, right? We are not interested in unanswered list at all. So rather than doing this, let me delete this tuple in here, okay? And we only need the first element out of this. So I'm going to say, bring me the first element by adding 0 in here. So I'm going to work with answered list only. I don't need a summary in here at all. What I need is the list content of the answered list. So let me print this and see how it looks like, as we did in the previous section. So if I print and cast this answered list to be a list, real list, and say get MAC address once more and give the target of 10.0.2.8, let me save this and run this once more and see what we got. Okay, it seems that we got the result back. Let's try to analyze this list in here. As you can see, it starts with ether and we see the destination FFF here, and it meant that just broadcast this message to the whole network. We have the PDST, and I think it stops here and we got another list in the following part of this list. Okay, so it has to be list in list, it has to be nested. So let me try this. I think I can say answer list and get me 0. So let's try to dig in one step at a time. So I believe it will be simpler. Yeah, I think it's simpler. We got rid of the first parentheses in here, but the rest stays the same. So it got a little bit simpler, but not as much as we expect. So I believe we have to shorten this list a little bit more. So let me go back and try to get another portion of this list. Of course, at this point we can go and read the documentation, but sometimes it helps to try things out and see the results on your own. So I'm going to do 0, 0 to get the first part. So let me save this and let me run this once more and see what we got. And as you can see, we got this part, and it really doesn't do me any good because I don't have the MAC address information in here. Target MAC address should be on another part like 0, 1, 2 or something. So I believe we have 2 lists in here, so I have to get the other one. So rather than saying 0, 0, maybe we should try 0, 1, because I can see HWDST in the second part in the previous log. So let me go back and say 0, 1, okay, and save it once more and call it once more. Now let me run this and see the results. Yeah, here we see the target MAC address, right? If you look closely, you will see the HWSRC, the hardware source, and it has a value of 080027 yada yada yada. So there are a couple of ways to get this. You can try and just get it with regular expression, you can do for loop, you can search for other tools to get this, but also Scapy has a built-in method to get this as well. So you have to know what you're looking for. So we are looking for HWSRC. So if I say dot HWSRC in here, then it will only get me this part of this list. So let me try this. And as you can see, now I have this MAC address, but it's cast to be a list, so it looks a little awkward. So I believe if I delete this casting, then I get the result as I want. So let me delete this list from here and only print answered list 0 first dot HWSRC. So let me save this, okay, and let me run this once more. And as you can see, now we managed to get the MAC address only. We can use this rather than printing this. We can return this, right? We can return this so that we have a get MAC address function. We give the IP, we specify the IP, and in return we get the MAC address of that specified IP. So now it's pretty clear. Actually, you can use this HWSRC thing in the previous example network scanner as well. You don't have to use that summary. You can just create your own variables and show it to the user. So I believe we made a very good progress. So let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're gonna test this ARP poisoning.